Imagine you are sitting around a small fire 20,000 years ago. You are cold, you are hungry, you are exhausted. Your life is an endless, repetitive loop of hunting, gathering, and just trying to survive until the sun comes up. The world out there in the dark is full of things designed to kill you. Dire wolves, cave bears, harsh winters, disease, starvation. But there is one thing you are absolutely not afraid of: other humans. If another tribe wanders into your valley tomorrow morning, you don't panic. You don't grab a spear. You don't build a shield wall or scream at them to get off your land. Instead, you walk over to them. You trade some berries for some flint. You share a fire. Maybe your groups intermarry. And then you go your separate ways. Why? Because for 290,000 years, fighting was a terrible survival strategy. Think about it biologically. If you get into a physical fight with another human and you break your hand, you can't throw a spear. If you can't throw a spear, you can't hunt. If you can't hunt, you starve. And in a world with no hospitals, no antibiotics, and no grocery stores, a broken bone or a deep cut is a death sentence. Early humans avoided violence not because we were morally perfect angels, but because we literally could not afford to get hurt. Peace was a biological necessity. It was the only way to stay alive. If there was a dispute, if someone stole your food or insulted you, you didn't declare war. You just packed up your camp and walked away. The earth was huge. The horizon was infinite. So how did we go from sharing fires to dropping bombs on each other? How did human beings invent war? To understand that, you have to look at the exact moment the story changed. The moment we ran out of space. Around 14,000 years ago, the Earth started to change. The climate shifted dramatically. In North Africa, green, lush valleys began to dry up and turn to dust. The Sahara Desert was expanding like a slow-moving fire. The animals started dying off. If you wanted to survive, you couldn't just walk in any direction anymore. If you walked into the desert, you died. You had to pack up your camp and move toward the only thing that mattered: water. Thousands of nomadic humans were pushed out of the dying lands and forced to crowd around the Nile River. Suddenly, the infinite space was gone. You were trapped, you were starving, and you were completely surrounded by strangers. And this is where our story gets dark. In 1964, a team of scientists were digging in the sand near the Nile Valley, in a place called Jebel Sahaba. They made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. They found a graveyard, 59 skeletons buried in the earth, men, women, and children. But these weren't people who died peacefully of old age. When scientists examined the bones, they found stone arrowheads and flint blades buried deep inside their skulls, their pelvises, and their spines. They found deep cut marks on their forearm bones, which meant these people had their arms raised, trying to block incoming attacks. Now, you might be asking, is this actually real? Yes, it is real, and it is terrifying. Jebel Sahaba is the oldest known crime scene on planet Earth. It is the very first time in the history of our species that we have physical, undeniable proof of one group of humans organizing just to slaughter another. They weren't fighting over ideology. They were fighting over water. They were fighting to survive the climate squeeze. But here is the really important part. Jebel Sahaba was a tragedy, but it was just a desperate fight over a shrinking puddle. It wasn't full-scale, institutional war. So, what happens next? How does violence become a permanent system? To see that, we have to fast forward a few thousand years and move down to the shores of Lake Turkana in Kenya, to a site called Nataruk. About 10,000 years ago, something happened at Nataruk that changed the definition of human violence. Archaeologists digging in the dried mud of a lagoon found the remains of 27 individuals, but they hadn't been buried carefully in a graveyard. They had been dropped into the mud and left to rot. When the researchers looked closer, the story the bones told was horrifying. Smashed cheekbones, shattered knees, obsidian blades left lodged in skulls and necks. The women were killed just as brutally as the men, including one woman who was heavily pregnant. And the darkest detail of all, some of the skeletons had their hands bound together. This wasn't two desperate tribes clashing over a waterhole. This was an execution, a calculated massacre. One group of humans had realized that the easiest way to ensure their own survival was to completely eliminate another group, but even Nataruk was just a spark. For war to become a permanent, inescapable part of human life, someone had to invent a trap. And they did. It was the most dangerous, society-altering thing humans ever invented: farming. About 10,000 years ago, in the Middle East, you get tired of chasing animals. You realize that if you put a seed in the ground, food grows. You don't have to wander in the cold anymore. You can build a permanent house. You can stay in one place. You can tame wild sheep and keep them in a pen. It sounds like a massive leap forward for humanity, right? It sounds like a happy ending. It was a disaster. The moment you plant a field of wheat, you have created something brand new in human history: property. Think about it. When you were a nomad, you only owned what you could carry in your hands: a spear, a basket, a hide. But now Now you have a farm. You have a silo full of grain that took you 6 grueling months to grow. That grain is wealth, and wealth is a magnet. If the tribe in the next valley is starving because a drought killed the animals, they look at your silo. They realize it is much easier to come over and kill you for your grain than it is to go starve in the woods. Suddenly your farm is a target. And here is the trap. You can't just run away like the nomads did. If you run, you leave your food behind, and you die. You have to stay. You have to fight. To protect your stuff, you need a wall. Look at the ancient city of Jericho, one of the oldest continuous human settlements in the world, built around 9000 BC. The very first monumental thing they built wasn't a beautiful temple or a library. It was a massive 12-foot-high stone wall, surrounded by a deep ditch. They didn't build a 12-foot stone wall to keep out cave lions. They built it to keep out other humans. But a wall can't fight on its own. A wall needs guards. Guards need weapons. To pay the guards, the leaders need to collect taxes. Guards turn into a permanent class of soldiers. Soldiers turn into standing armies. And the second you have an army, you have divided the entire world into 2 groups: the people inside your wall and the enemies on the outside. The science backs this up perfectly. The moment farming spreads across the globe, archaeologists see a massive, undeniable explosion in shattered bones and violent deaths. The more stuff we owned, the more we killed each other for it. We stopped seeing other humans as neighbors to trade with and started seeing them as threats to our property. Today, you turn on a screen and look at the news. You see borders and missiles and standing armies and endless, exhausting conflict. You are told by society that this is just human nature. You are told that humans are naturally violent, greedy, territorial creatures, and that war is inevitable. But your DNA knows that is a lie. You are carrying the genetics of people who survived ice ages and apex predators not by fighting, but by sharing, by cooperating, by chewing food for their toothless elders and taking care of their sick. You are not a killer by nature. Your body is running a 300,000-year-old biological program built for community and peace. War is not who we are. It is not our nature. It is just a technology, an invention we built to protect the things we decided to own. We traded the infinite horizon and our freedom for a patch of dirt and a silo full of grain, and we have been dying for it ever since.